let's talk a little bit about iteration, how any engagement develops is sympathy-antipathy synthesis. Every system has some problems. Every system has some benefits. And the new version hopefully fixes some of the main problems and still keeps or adds to the benefits. So I've been using YouTube and virtual media as a way to digest and engage with the world, for a number of years. And the first problem is going into a stupor. I can just watch 2 or 3 hours of YouTube or whatever and go numb without realizing it. That's a problem. The other problem is, it can be more stimulating, more dopamine generating, and thus more addictive than going out and getting a chore done, taking out the trash, etc. So another problem. Another problem is it's hard to engage meaningfully with most media. Now, I've tried this, you may or may not have, but when I finish an Audible book, I often write to the author. And I would say that 90% of the time, the message I get back is, I'm too busy to reply to all these emails. Or I get nothing. So the attempt to engage and not go numb kind of hits a wall there. Then there's also, the fact that writing a comment, I'll often get a thumbs up, but it's not high dynamic, engaging conversation. A little bit of that, but not much. Sometimes I'll write a comment in response to YouTube that's a video I like that's, a page long. And I might get a comment that says, wow, what a great comment. But there's not dialogue. And so in order not to go numb, in order not to become too passive and just veg out, we need to engage and apply what we're learning and listening to. And I have not found a way to do that in any of my portals. In other words, with the authors that I might read or the videos that I might watch. I'll write, to Tim Ferriss or Andrew, Andrei Zhik or whatever. But most of the time, there's not an engagement. And I think that's damaging. I think it puts us to sleep in a certain way and trains us to digest information without doing it. It basically gives a message that is not very important because we haven't taken an action. So I want to iterate and solve that particular problem. Now, the idea that creates this problem is the idea, well, millions of people are going to watch this video. Of course, one person can't relate meaningfully to 1 million people if they all commented. So just don't even bother. Don't engage. And what I want to do is flip that on its head and look at social science. I think it's Dunbar's law that recognized that a human being's brain cannot engage meaningfully with more than 300 people. That if you grow up in a village of 300 people and in fairly close proximity with 300 people, you can know everything about 300 people. And when you know everything about 300 people, you can attune better to those 300 people. And so I think the important thing is not to try and pretend that you can have any kind of intimacy with 1,000 people, with 10,000 people. And so the iteration that I'm introducing is, I don't want 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, and to try and have a disjointed, largely invisible, based on projection rather than real data about those people. conversation. What I want is meaningful conversations with less than 300 people, with the amount of people that can actually have a chance to learn a little bit about me rather than fill that vacuum with endless projection, and that I can learn a lot about them, so that it's a relationship with data rather than projection and stereotypes. And so that's an iteration that I'm introducing in the channel in a variety of ways. My long-term goal is to have an app where there's deep intimacy and it's really easy to communicate. But by keeping it to 300 people or less, then the question becomes, well, who should those 300 people be? And I like the pay-to-play model, but it's not necessarily healthy, given the global, disparities in wealth, that it be solely based on money. I also think it's unhealthy to pretend that there's a price at which you can buy emotional involvement or physical participation. Here, I'll give you $1 million, but I'm not showing up. And other people who show up, they can get in for 100,000, but, I'm not actually going to show up because, the extra 900,000 will cover it, but it doesn't. There's doing participatory work to build and sustain relationships requires a certain amount of presence and time and skill that no amount of money can buy. And so, who do I want to engage with? 10, 20, 30, not more than 300. Who do I want to engage with? Well, in order to put this channel together, I think I'm around $100,000 in time, equipment, learning curve, etc., to get to the point where I can do this in this way. And there's no other place that I'd like to be investing this time and money, because there's no better goal. But I want to be engaging with the people who are the most committed, meaning they're spending the most amount of time, the most amount of their resources, the most amount of their money on this type of venture, on moving towards a 10x lifestyle. So in writing, that's the quality of the writing, the depth of the writing, the thoughtfulness of the writing. In courtesy, that's the effort to understand and communicate. In time, it's the quality and the amount of time. In money, it's the investment in money. And I left home with $50 in my pocket as an illegal immigrant in Canada, and started my first business with that $50 and turned that into more, and then turned that into more. And, so I'm not pretending that this stuff just comes out of nowhere. Every skill requires practice. Every result required an investment. But I'm also very clear that anyone could do it. It's not like, it's an impossible thing to create a venture that generates the money that can free up time, et cetera, to do these things. So I think it should be a self-selecting group of people based on commitment of time, money, and natural resources towards the goal. Now, the most potent group imaginable we'd all pitch in 100,000 and 3 or 4 hours of our time minimum each day and utilize our resources and a lifetime of skills to support one another in creating a 10x life. But I want the 300 people participating who most want to be there, not in words, but in the presence, the commitment, the clarity, the investment of their time, money, natural resources. Because as you learn things, as you apply your time, money, natural resources in this goal, you'll be able to teach me things that I'm not going to run into, that haven't been designed yet. And so that's another kind of iteration thing, is I don't want to be de facto in kind of a leadership role, but more moving towards collaboration based on competency, based on commitment and investment. Now, the beautiful thing with YouTube videos and stuff is, millions of people could watch any of these videos and do whatever they want with them, and that's fine. But in terms of an active engagement, I want to be here with up to 300 people to dialogue, to respond, to solve equations together, utilizing the principle of synergy, so that we track our lives as they get better and get stuck. Now, another kind of problem I want to iterate is the pedestaling of teachers, etc. So many teachers, gurus, whatever it is, get put up on pedestals or put themselves up on pedestals. And it's easy to do if someone has high accomplishment in some area and they just don't talk about or delete all of what are often, simultaneously increased failures or inconsistencies in other areas. And so one of the videos in this series is kind of all about depedestaling myself, because I want, in order for us to work to be supportive of one another, it's great that you can know that I've achieved thousands of goals, but it's also important that you know that I have chronic fatigue, and at times it feels absolutely miserable to get out of bed. And, I want both of those to be out there. So those are kind of to make media less passive and more engaging, to be selective rather than trying to be as big as possible. I'm really disgusted by the idea of let's have 2,000 friends kind of and pretend that you're a friend, we're all friends, etc., but you don't know anything about one another in any meaningful way and wouldn't go and pick any of those 2,000 friends up at the airport. So quality versus quantity is kind of a counter move, a contrarian move in social media. Quality versus quantity, engagement versus passivity, and then realness and complexity rather than any form of pedestaling. And to the extent that I can accomplish all of those things together with you on this channel, I'll be very pleased.